So, we'll give you an opportunity to kind of start off with questions or like areas where you want a little clarification. Like it could be, arms turning into hammers and balls and all that kind of stuff that would be happening. Kind of start off with that and then try to bring it all together and ground it in some kind of manner. But kind of start with questions, insights, clarification.
Did Cheswick drown or kill himself?
I'd say both.
Okay.
I mean, he obviously drowns. And with definitely we have drowning that takes place when they take him out of the pool. I would lean towards it is being a suicide for a couple reasons. One, at least from what we've read within primarily part two, how they describe his fingers. So far as how does he drown? I mean, besides underwater, he's stuck in the grate, and the idea is like his fingers are so far into that grate that they can't pull them out, and that's when they get the screwdriver to actually remove the grate. So as they're taking his body out of the water, like the grate is still going to be completely stuck within his fingers. So it doesn't seem like it would be, oh, I'm swimming by and my finger's stuck, help me kind of get out. That he wants to be in there. The things that would, and I'd also say later on in the book for when we talk about next Friday, you'll have Nurse Ratched kind of making references to it, that she would blame that death not on herself, not on Cheswick, not on anyone else in the hospital other than McMurphy. McMurphy's the one who's kind of responsible for this, which we can kind of get into that. What happened? Anyone recall, and I know plot's kind of hard to keep track of all the events, why would Cheswick feel that desire? Ethan, since you brought it up. And he's not getting removed to disturb completely yet at this point, but there is a little bit of conflict that's going on between him and Nurse.
I thought there was a conflict between him and McMurphy because they were disagreeing on the cigarette situation.
They never quite get to the big disagreement, but there's certainly with the cigarettes being rationed, Cheswick is upset about that. And Cheswick is pretty much the person that is, if you're going to talk the talk, you better walk the walk. Cheswick's all talk. So Cheswick will say things, but then he's the person who's going to back down. The nice thing about having McMurphy is he can say things, and then what will McMurphy do for him? Follow through and back him up. So when he's kind of complaining about the cigarettes, I want my cigarettes, what are you going to, don't you think, Mac, we need to do something? McMurphy's just sitting there in his chair, not doing anything, because what's the piece of information that McMurphy learned the last time that he was in the swimming pool from the lifeguard? You're committed, you're not sentenced. So at that point, McMurphy realizes that he needs to kind of walk that tightrope a little bit, and he starts cleaning the toilets and the floor and the baseboard and doing all those jobs much better than he was before, because if Nurse Ratched's in control of how long I'm here, I need to make sure I'm not doing anything that's going to disrupt her. So when Cheswick is, not fighting, but certainly arguing about the cigarettes, he's expecting McMurphy to come and back him up. McMurphy's not going to do that because that would cause him now to have to go to whether it be disturbed or get a longer sentence. So I need to act properly. He's not going to back up Cheswick. Cheswick feels that he's now being left out to, dry on his own, and that's the route that he ends up taking at that point. Which, with a lot of the folks, one of the things we'll probably get into is, why are they here in the first place? All of them, I would say, for some type of reason, are probably there because they are convinced that something is wrong with them. Because the other piece of information that McMurphy learns is he's one of only the few who are actually committed. Mostly everyone else is there voluntarily. So Harding could leave at any point. Billy could leave, legally at any point, but they choose to stay there because there is, even though it's not a good circumstance for them, they feel more comfortable where they are in the hospital as opposed to going out within the real world. And so, in some ways, a lot of them probably used to feeling neglected or used to feeling that they've been kind of isolated, pushed away. Here's the person with McMurphy who's one of us, and once he starts to do that to them, then that's the route that Cheswick ends up taking. Julie, do you have? Yeah, that's fine.
It was about Chief 3
With plastic? Okay.
Yeah. How does it die after? Like you just snort. And how did Galactus die after?
That's the creepy part, because then you read it and you start to go, did that actually happen? This is going to be a very roundabout way, I think, Julia, to what you're asking about, because I think it's kind of easier to kind of start with Chief, and then maybe try to at least understand what his overall thought process is. What are things that we know about Chief? And it doesn't have to be related to plastic. Like you, for example, were saying over there that we're something that he does or goes to. I was thinking something else, like the place that he actually goes to that you folks are hoping to go to in about 2 years.
Oh, yeah, he does go to
He goes to college. Chief goes to college.
For something architecture, like structure based, like math.
Electric.
Yeah, electric.
Yeah. So things that we know about Chief, number one, we know that he's Native American. Based from his father. What's his mother? I didn't hear what you said. Yeah, Native American father, white mother. So his name, Bromden, is not a Native American name, it's his mother's name. So he takes his mother's name as opposed to Native American name. But they refer to him as being chief just because of, Native American heritage. So he has a father's Native American who was a chief, and then he has a mother who was white townsperson. We know that he goes to college at least for a little bit. Something with electrical. And when they're in the library, he's kind of flipping through those old magazines and kind of reminding him of that. What else do we know about him?
He was then drafted into the, Army for their electricity division.
Okay, so he's in World War II. And it's after World War II that he, at some point, shortly after World War II, that he then goes into the hospital. Are the two related? We don't know for sure. But there's something that does kind of happen with World War II that ends him going to the hospital. So World War II, and then admitted shortly after. What else do we know about him? At least plays high school football. Yeah, and you have that flashback where he's going back into the mill, and there's the girl who's like, get me out of here. Which, you're reading it and you're kind of going, this is weird. I'm not exactly sure what's going on. But I think a big thing to take note of, what's the girl asking him to do? What you just said. Get me out. What does she look at Chief as being? Her way out, big strong guy. Is drawing like Buff McMurphy and all that kind of stuff. She's looking at Chief as being this large person. If anyone's going to get me out of here, it's him. Now you move forward 20 years, 25 years. It's total opposite. The big guy is small and is looking for not necessarily someone to get him out, but he's looking for someone to kind of help him. So at one time, Chief was big. At one time, Chief was strong. At one time, Chief was confident. At one time, Chief was, social and all those kinds of things. And now he's kind of turned into this, shell of a person that he was before. So he wasn't necessarily always like this, but there certainly have been some things that have been adding over time. Part of it could be World War II. Anything else that maybe could be contributing to antisocial behavior or feeling wronged or anything like that? When he has flashbacks, what does he tend to go towards? To yeah, Dad is in a lot of them, and so they're on reservation. And who also then tends to show up with a lot of these flashbacks? Dad's on reservation. He's on reservation. Who else is coming onto the reservation?
Didn't you say, like, you made like an analogy with the nurse?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This is kind of
What's the government want to do with the land? So yeah, father's there, government officials are there. Papa's making the government officials feel stupid because he's looking up and talking about the geese, and they're going, "There's not any geese," and he goes, "Sure there are," and it's the same thing McMurphy's doing with Nurse. We're just kind of making her feel kind of silly, inadequate. They want to put something physically on their land. They're up in the northwest. It's not a highway, but there's going to be some building. There's going to be some infrastructure because they got a ton of water there. They want to put in a hydroelectric dam. All right. So the idea, let's keep that there. With the government officials, what they're hoping to do, take over the land, put in hydroelectric dam. A hydroelectric dam, in its simplest thing, is one big what? It's a mechanism. It is a machine. What is he paranoid about? The combine is one big machine, and he never goes into a whole lot of detail about it. And even if he were, I shouldn't say detail. He never goes into a whole lot of clarity about it as to how all this thing works. But basically, what is the combine? It's an all-powerful machine. This is where him and Henry David Thoreau become buddies, because Thoreau looks at the government as being a machine. He looks at the machine, the combine, as being something that's all-powerful. What happens to him as a young child? Basically, they are getting kicked off their land because the government / machine is coming in and kind of taking over. So what you start to have with Chief is a lot of paranoia about mechanisms in general. So tomorrow, and this is where we kind of start to get into plastic a little bit, when we kind of go into a little bit more detail about rhetorical devices, one of the things that we could certainly look at is like machine imagery, whether it be the pills, the medication, there's little transistors in and all that kind of stuff, or how clocks are going to go forward and backwards, or how when he's having a dream, and I would say it is a dream, where he feels like the floor is opening up and all that kind of stuff. The big thing for it is I think it really kind of illustrates the paranoia that he has, that there's some kind of machine that controls everything. Is it one of those things where, how does Vlasic end up being deceased when he wakes up in the morning? I have absolutely no idea. Is it one of those things where he has a dream of Vlasic every other week, and this happens to be the same day that he dies? Maybe. I don't think that Vlasic literally is on a meat hook being ripped open and having gears and dust and all that kind of stuff, coming out of him. However, what is happening to a lot of the people, a lot of the patients that are on the ward, they're being stripped of humanity. So basically, it is just kind of like a mechanical zombie at some ways. That there's not really a whole lot of thought process and whatnot going for them. But I would kind of look at that as being like a primary example. This is how far this paranoia has kind of gone for him. What happens too with the combine is you tend to get, what's kind of like the easiest machine that he references all the time throughout the course of the book that pumps in when things are going bad. The fog kind of starts to come in. Pay attention to when those kind of scenes start to happen, because when he's feeling paranoid or when he's feeling worried, that's when the fog's going to come in. When McMurphy is starting to get control over the ward, he starts to see things. When McMurphy starts doing this again, where before Cheswick's drowning, and even after Cheswick's drowning, actually, you have a couple of those chapters where, Ethan, I think you were kind of going, what's going on here, where you got the two short chapters. The one short chapter talks about how Nurse is at the controls, whatever was wrong before seems to be fixed, all the circuits are working properly. Why are they working properly? Because McMurphy's no longer being the person who's going to be trying to take over the ward, and things are now running again the way that they kind of should be. After they do the vote for the World Series, and Chief actually raises his hand, later on, like the next chapter, he goes, it's one of the first nights I looked out the window and I could actually see things. So McMurphy, in a way, is kind of pulling him out of the fog, from time to time. So when those events happen, kind of pay attention to what's happening fog-wise or machine-wise. If the machine's working, McMurphy's probably being small in his hole in the swimming pool. If McMurphy's getting big again, then the fog kind of tends to subside, and the nurse doesn't quite have the control the way that she would have before. Plus, he's going to have flashbacks. So when the flashbacks occurring, are they foggy? Are they clear? A lot of that stuff kind of goes into his mindset, and it gives you a better idea as to what's kind of going on with but certainly, I think with plastic, you get that whole concept as to the machine, the epitome kind of it. One thing that I mentioned to you is a lot of people read it, rightfully so, that there's criticisms about the book so far as, racist stereotypes, sexist stereotypes, and things like that. I think there's a couple things that could be going on for it. Number one, with Chief, what's he dealt with for a lot of his life because of his background and being kicked off his land? Why can he get kicked off his land? They're Native American. They're Indians, not North Hills Indians. They'd be Northwest Indians. But the idea is, to the white government officials, they don't have the same rights. Okay, so he's been certainly dealing with prejudice his whole entire life, or what you would assume would be most of it. So I don't think it would be a shock that he would therefore also kind of have similar viewpoints towards other people. Because keep in mind, he is the narrator, and Virginia was kind of talking about this in homeroom. Everything that we're looking at is coming through his lens. So part of the fact that he is going to have, negative viewpoints towards other groups, it's something that he's kind of used to. It's the way that he was kind of brought up. Doesn't mean it's obviously going to be right. Another thing, though, that I think would be a little bit more appropriate with what's kind of going on within the book, what's the Combine going to ultimately be or representative of? Especially if this was written in the late 1950s, early 1960s, post-Red Scare, suspicion of everyone. Yeah, it's pretty much going to be like, the government, the man, the institution. If this is that all-powerful government, who runs the government from a demographic standpoint? There's not many of us in this room. Hi, Johnny. Hi, Ethan. If it's the three of us, I'm president.
I mean, you can throw this right in the comments real fast.
I'm not sure what roles they'll have, but I'll be the one in charge. So at this point, again, we're dealing 1950s, 1960s. Those who are going to be in charge are pretty much going to be white men. Who's doing the dirty work for the Combine? Nurse Ratchet, female. And, the other nurses that are getting mentioned there, female. You have the black boys. You have the aides. You don't really have any other male people who are kind of running the place, and that's where part of that emasculation idea kind of comes through, that nurses are able to kind of control everyone through emasculation. And what's happening to Waller upstairs in the bathroom stall would kind of be an example of him feeling emasculated. What does the government do using female or using African Americans, using minorities? You could say they're using them. What would be another term? Thinking like an E word. And this would be happening with, I think it got said over here. What was it? That was close. I guess it wasn't quite what I was looking for. Exploit. So they kind of exploit them. You have the other people do the work for you so that you don't have to worry about dusting yourself off, washing your hands from any of the problems that kind of comes by. So the idea that the Combine is going to use minorities or use other people that are not going to fall into that, male, white category kind of makes sense for that fear, that phobia that could be taking place 1950s, 1960s, and whatnot. It's an all-powerful machine that uses people. If you don't fit within their viewpoint, then something has to be wrong with you. If you're in the hospital, if you're one of the patients that are here, then something has to be wrong with you because you don't quite fit the norm. So then the question becomes, well, what's wrong with these people? And wrong, I'd say, kind of like, quotation marks. Anyone have any idea why any of them would be in the hospital? I mean, because we don't know. Any guesses for like why Martini would be there, why Harding would be there? The only other patient that would be committed besides McMurphy is Scanlon, because he wants to blow stuff up. Why does he want to watch the 6 o'clock news? To see if anything's been bombed, and he'll even sit there, at his table working at, imaginary machinery. He's the only one that's committed. Everyone else is there because they choose to be there. Well, but can you and you're right. Or if you haven't been told that you're insane, you've been told that something's like wrong with you. You're not quote unquote normal, right? Anything like that. What would be a reason that any of them would feel that they have to be there for them? In numbers, for sure, for them being there. Like with these two, any specific reason why Harding or Bibbett would be there?
Bibbett, he's on the center, right?
Correct.
I think it's like just a confidence issue with him. Like I think, most people kind of just ignore his Sutherland passive, but he's just so like worried about it and afraid of it that he just can't really function on his own. But he's not really insane. He's just very insecure.
How old's Bibbett? He's 30. He's like 31. Bibbett comes off as being how old? Like if you were just to, based on him talking, reading, the way that he's acting and all that kind of stuff, I'd say he is, Emily, do you have a number in mind? Okay, yeah, he comes off, I'd say, as being like a teenager or like a child. His mother, where's his mother? Mom's a friend of nurse knows mom because mom works in the hospital. So wherever Billy is, why is he going to have a confidence issue, or why is he not going to stand up for himself? Because if he says something to the nurse, what's nurse going to do to mom? Let him know about it, and it seems like mom pretty much treats Billy like he's a little kid. So yeah, he does have a confidence issue. We call him a mama's boy. More than anything, that he's going to do exactly what he's told because he doesn't want to get into kind of trouble. But yeah, he's somebody who's in his 30s, but yet is kind of looked at as being pretty childish. Does it mean that he is insane? No. Does it mean that he's stupid? No. Does it mean that there's anything wrong with him? No, probably not in any real medical sense, but it would be that he's kind of been treated, or he's always been put down to the point that he kind of lacks any confidence whatsoever. Any idea about Harding? Because Harding is the one who they talk about who has gone to college. He's the smart one. He's the sophisticated one. He's the intellectual one. Why would he be here? I think you could put wife. I think you could put something else. Well, insecure about. Yeah. I think more likely than not, Harding's gay. In his 1950s, 1960s, he's being, even if someone's not pointing him out and going, there's something wrong with you, he feels, therefore, that something would be wrong with him. What does Chief, and the Chief goes to stereotypes. What does Chief always reference whenever Harding talks? And when Harding gets nervous, he starts to hide these things. His hands. Talk about his delicate hands and how he'll always talk with them. And then when he starts to feel nervous, he'll kind of put them away. And it's going to continue to kind of build on, and he'll talk a little bit more about it later on, but you get the sense that Harding feels that something's inadequate with him because of his sexuality. So he's married to someone, and Vera comes in every now and then. He feels that Vera's always looking at other people. He always feels inadequate whenever Vera's around and things like that. Chances, and he'll even kind of make some references later on that'll add to it. I think he feels lack of confidence. He doesn't feel that he's right or man enough, quote unquote, to be within society because of his sexuality. So what you have, and again, this is where that time period becomes very important. If you don't fit a certain mold, a certain norm, something therefore is going to be wrong with you. McMurphy is a horrific, horrible person. What does McMurphy not fit? The mold of what a good person should be. So he is definitely an anti-hero because he doesn't have those qualities, those norms you expect within a heroic figure. But when you have a bunch of people who are going to be considered outcasts to begin with, anti-hero might be the only person who's going to kind of stand up for them because that quote-unquote traditional hero probably won't because they don't fit those same characteristics, insecurities, all of that kind of stuff that would be going on with it. And we'll still take a look at some things, certainly tomorrow that's going on. This is just with parts 1 and 2. But, certainly kind of keep an eye moving forward as to why is McMurphy doing what he's